Hey guys, it's your boy, Ballface8020, back again with another great commentary. First order of business. I know that there's been some requests for a black pill video on Oofy Doofy theory. Um, I have not checked that out yet, so I can't do a video on it. I hope to do something about it maybe this weekend. We'll see. I mean, it depends, like, I don't really know anything about it, so maybe I look it up and there's nothing to respond to. But if there is something there, then yeah, I would love to do a response video about that. Again, I'd like to say hopefully this weekend. Um, Maybe later, depending on how things are going, how I'm feeling. Second order of business is a toast. Not a toast, but let's just all share a nice, delicious glass of whole water. Whole water only, no 2%, 1%, or skim water. If you drink 2% or 1% skim water, you are banned for life from this channel. Oh, yeah. Water doesn't get enough credit. I used to not drink water. I used to drink, soda and stuff, but my stomach can't handle that anymore. And, I don't, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I miss it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I think it would be like, man, it would be great to have like a grape soda with this or an orange soda. I don't really miss regular soda. Uh, yeah, I mean, and you know what? I do kind of miss it. But still, the thing is, there's something to be said. There's something to be said for water too. Okay, now what we're all here for, another sales tutorial. This video is about, I already did a video about making effective cold calls. I'm not sure it was a very effective video though, because went on really long, it was rambling. What else is new, right? Um, but this one is a little bit different. This one I'm talking more about the mindset you need to make cold calls, or to make, cold calls, outbound calls, whatever you want to call them, whatever you want to call them. And specifically, for this specific part of sales, for calling, because I really think it deserves to be its own video, its own subject, and it's something that I've like I thought about before I started doing this, and I think about it a lot now that I'm doing a lot of these calls. The reason that this is suddenly so near and dear to my heart is because in the last 2 days I've made a total of like around 160 outbound dials. Um, so I think it was 75 on Monday and around 85 today. So and I only work part time, so I mean that's a lot of dials. It means I was pretty much dying, especially like with my shitty system that we have at my work, where it takes a while to like look this stuff up. That means I'm like either calling, talking to somebody on the phone, or looking up numbers pretty much all day. Um, except like there are times where my brain is just like completely fried and I have to just stop and play on my phone. But so I've been calling a lot, so that's one of the reasons I've been thinking about it. So I want to start off again with a little rehash of what we talked about last time, that the different types of cold calling. Now, like, you're already going to be in two broad groups. There's calling via the phone, and then there's cold calling when you're actually, door is more like door knocking, going up to businesses, going to residential areas. Those are two different types of cold calling. But even within just the calling portion, just the phone calling portion, there's different types. There's completely cold, like they have no idea who you are and you've never spoken to them again and you have no affiliation with them whatsoever. So an example of this in commercial would be, just calling on a business saying, "Hey, do you want a new website?" Something like that. And then it doesn't really exist anymore, but just calling, if you for resident for business to consumer, it would be like just calling somebody out of the phone book. You can't do that anymore because of the do not call list. It's not very efficient anyway, especially for certain types of businesses. Uh, so like cold calling, so that those technically that's what cold calling is, but it's often used broader than that, and I use it broader than that too. It could be, one way to define cold calling, and I think that there is something to this, is anybody who isn't expecting your call, really. Who isn't expecting your call and but I would say that that's pretty much, I would say that anybody who isn't expecting your call and doesn't have some type of direct connection to you personally is a cold call. Like, let's say that you had a client and they referred you to somebody else. They referred somebody else to you, said, "Hey, you should call my friend Tom," and they gave you his number. That would be kind of in the gray area. I'm not sure if I would call that a cold call or not, because then there's at least some personal connection. You can be like, "Hey, Tom, Bill told me to call you," something like that. That's like right that's in the gray zone. But I would say like examples of cold calls in things that aren't like completely cold could be, they could be a former client of yours and they're not expecting your call. They could be a current client of yours who you're trying to sell something else to. But in that case, there is some connection. So that one, I guess that's, it's still kind of close. I mean, especially if you don't know them personally, like, you know, they maybe they've been a customer of your business, but you don't know them. You've never spoken with them before. You have no relationship with them. I would say that that's still a type of cold call. They could be a cold lead, like, you know, like again, I talked about the mortgages maybe a few months ago. They had submitted like a request for information about mortgage refinancing. So I mean, that's pretty cold. You call them up 3 months later, they probably got hit with a million calls by then. They don't know you. They weren't expecting your call. That's pretty cold. So those are all in it. And then, you know, like I said, there's essentially what are like true cold calls. It doesn't really exist in the business to consumer space, although there's things that come pretty close to it. You know, just because even then, what you're going to have is like it's just going to be some really old lead, something like that. It's going to be more effective. You know, different types of calling are going to be more effective in some industries as others, and how you open the call. I really don't think there's a one size fits all. It depends on what kind of cold call you're making and what your business is, what you're selling, and what kind of type of people you're trying to sell to. Those were also, I don't really think there's a one size fits all cold call opener. I think it really depends on, like I said, on the type of cold call, what you're selling, stuff like that. So okay, but anyway, I mentioned this before in the previous video that like before I started doing cold calling, I was thinking like, oh, I could never do that. And there's a whole host of reasons that I thought that, and I think a lot of people probably, you know, who might be interested in sales, you know, shut themselves off to you know, any type of cold calling. They say, oh no, I can never do that. They just, you know, I can never do it. And there's a lot of different reasons that people feel that way, that I felt that way. And you know, you'll notice this sometimes, like when people cold. So we'll start at the top. When you'll notice sometimes that when people make cold calls, they'll sound like apologetic. Like, oh, hey, I'm sorry to bother you. Is now a good time? Shit like that and stuff like that. And the reason is, like, the reason that people, like, you know, are often so timid is because they feel like they are in the wrong, like they are doing something wrong, that they're being rude, that they're interrupting. Well, I mean, that they're interrupting somebody's day is a fact. They are. So they feel like they're being rude. They shouldn't, and so they're kind of you know, naturally defensive. They think like, you know, they're in the wrong, so they're going like that. And if cold calling is something you want to do, you really need to understand that there's no reason for you to feel that way. Okay? And here's the thing. The fact of the matter is, now, and look, the rest of the world doesn't get this. People who aren't in sales don't get this. They never will. I understand that. You have a right to prospect. Okay? A person or a company or business does not have a right not to be prospected. That right does not exist. Okay? You do not have a right to not be called and solicited. It doesn't exist. Okay? There is no right to not be solicited. Now, you can put yourself on the do not call list. If I call you or somebody calls you, you can request to be taken off the list. And at that point, you've got a right to not be called by that company. Okay? That's true. So you're on the do not call list. You have a right to not be totally cold called. You ask the person who's calling you, the cold caller, to take you off the list. You have a right after that to not be called by them. That's true. That's true. Absolutely right. Short of that, nope, no right to not be called. Doesn't exist. Okay? You don't want to be called? Tough shit. Tough shit. Fuck you, die. Okay? You don't have a right to not be called. Okay? It doesn't exist. It will never exist. It's never existed anywhere in the world. It never will. Okay? So I think that's the first thing, is you have to understand. When you're making these calls, you are completely within your rights. This is you've got a right to prospect. That's that. But it's a double-edged sword with that, okay? It's a double-edged sword, because just like you have a right to prospect and they don't have a right to be prospected, they have a right to be rude to you. You don't have a right to not be on the receiving end of rudeness. So they don't just have the right to hang up. So they don't have to just have the right to say not interested. They have the right to be like, fuck off, die, I hate you, I'm going to track you down and kill you. Well, they don't really have the right to say that, but as long as you know they don't mean it, they're allowed to vent. And this was something that I kind of had to learn for I had to learn the first part too. But you have to learn that and this goes for anything in life, really. I think, why do people get so angry, when people are rude to them or people are disrespectful to them? Because I've had a real problem with this, and I don't just mean in sales. I mean in life. People are rude, or they're very disrespectful, or they give me some tough guy act. That especially, I can get, very angry. And, why is that? And it's because we all instinctively feel like we have a right to not be, I don't even want to say mistreated, but we all have a right to not be treated rudely. Okay? That we all feel that way, and we don't. That right doesn't exist. Now, people shouldn't be rude to you. I mean, in any circumstance. So they shouldn't be rude to you, in life, and they shouldn't be rude to you if when you cold call them. But they've got the right. They've got the right to do it. I mean, that's if they do it, that's on them. That's their decision, not yours. And so, and the thing is, in cold calling, and I wouldn't have really expected this before I started, but most people aren't going to be rude. There's going to be people who hang up. There's going to be people who just give you like a blank, not interested. But neither of those things are really rude. Like me, right? Like if somebody cold called me, I would just hang up. I would just say, like somebody's like, now maybe if they said something like, Ballface 8020, hello, like, do you got 30 seconds? Or like, I'm going to be the sales call thing. Like, I'm going to be honest, this is a sales call. Do you want to hang up or do you want to listen to my pitch? Just because I'm a nice guy, I would be like, well, it's very unlikely that I'm going to buy anything, but, I'm in sales myself. Sure, I'll listen. And then, after they said it, I would be like, nah. Unless there was something like, unless they just happened to have something that really, shocked me. You never know, but I really doubt it. I can't imagine there'd be anything somebody would sell over the phone that I'd be interested in. Maybe if they were selling like time travel machines or something, but you know what I mean? It's just like, some things that aren't really good to sell over the phone. You'd probably sell a time travel machine in the store or online. So yeah, I think that's a really important thing to understand. And, we'll talk about this a little bit more further because, dealing with rejection and with rude or angry prospects. But before I talk about that, I want to mention the mindset before you dial. And this is, I know I mentioned him a lot, Benjamin Dennehy. He was asked about that, like what does he think before each call? And he says before each dial, he thinks they're gonna pick up the phone and they're gonna need they're gonna need what I'm selling, and they are so lucky that I'm calling. That's what he says. Complete opposite of my mindset. I'm not saying he's had a lot more success than me. If you can make it work that way, go ahead. Me, when I'm calling, what I usually do is I brace myself. I brace myself and say, like, this person is not going to want what I have. They're going to be irritated that I interrupted their day, and they're going to tell me they're not interested. I just, like braced for that in each call. And, so like, I mean, I guess I could try doing it the other way, but it wouldn't come natural to me. And my way works for me. It's just kind of like, just get it done because, I'm focused on the process, not the outcome. I'm focused on, I know I have to make this many dials and talk to this many people to get this many sales, shit like that. So, and the thing is, my way is much more realistic because most people just aren't picking up the phone. Okay, that's most people just aren't answering the phone. That's a fact. But but when you do get through to somebody, it's overwhelmingly they're not interested. It could be a hang up, it could be a not interested, it could be like Baldface 8020, not right now, maybe later, something like that. All different forms of not interested. I mean, that's just a fact. So I could try telling myself, like, this person needs what I'm selling and they're lucky I called, but, I'd be lying to myself. And, I don't want to, it would be honestly, it would be a type of coping. There's any type of rationalization. So I would rather just embrace reality and, and deal with it constructively. Just brace it, just say, like, this is going to be a rejection. This person's going to be annoyed. They're going to say no. Part of the business. Getting through shit like this is, what you do. And it's kind of like, it's prospecting. So, like, imagine you're prospecting for gold. Do you think with each dig of the shovel you're doing, you're thinking, oh, this time I'm going to hit gold? No, of course not. You just, like, okay, I've dug up some dirt. This next thing is going to probably be more dirt. And then the thing after that's going to be probably more dirt. And then if I keep doing, eventually gold's going to hit. But in any given scoop, nah, you're not going to hit anything. And it's just like that with any given call. Nah, you're probably not going to get anything. Just realistically, you're not. So why lie to yourself? But hey, do whatever works for you. Like I said, Benjamin Dennehy, he's made a lot more money than I have. But anyway, now dialing back to what I said about customers being rude and stuff, or just actually we just stick on the thing of rejection. Any type of cold calling, whatever it's going to, and I know it's going to vary on industry, it's going to vary on the type of cold calling, but there's going to be rejection. As I've explained. Now, here's the thing, right? When you ask people, talk to like anybody who's like, let's say you just talk to somebody, or maybe you yourself are thinking about going into sales in the cold calling thing. And what's the first thing they say of why they don't want to do it? It's going to be one of two things. It's either the most common, and probably what I said before I started doing this, is, are people going to be mean and yell? People are going to be angry and yell and shit like that. And the second most common, I think, or maybe even the most common, is just dealing with rejection. Now, we're going to talk about the angry and yelling prospects in a minute. Let's just talk about rejection first, because rejection is going to be the norm. The overwhelming thing of rejection. And this is another thing you can try to rationalize. I think a lot of sales trainers try to do it. Say, like, well, what are you afraid of? It's just rejection. You were already at no before you called. And this type of talk isn't really effective. I've engaged in it myself in other topics. But no, it's true. On a rational level, rejection doesn't hurt you. That's true. I mean, you like they say, you were already at no anyway. You already didn't have the sale. You have nothing to lose. So the rejection hasn't hurt you at all. That's true on a rational level. How it's not true on like an emotional, neurological level. I mean, for most people, if you're not a psychopath, rejection triggers a kind of it triggers like a kind of a type of psychological trauma. Might not bother everybody the same as others, because I remember the first time I got rejected, and this wasn't on a call. Okay, this was on an email that I sent. My first rejection, I was absolutely devastated. Like, I was completely shut down. I was thinking I can never do any sales again. I can't do this. This is I can't do it. For an email, not even a phone call. Although I actually think the email thing might have made it worse. Excuse me. Because that's all. I mean, that's all the email read. I mean, I had sent an email along with the video, and the response I got was just 2 words: not interested. I was absolutely devastated. So I know that rejection can hurt. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, because who fucking cares, right? But I know that it can hurt. Some people say even you've got to learn to like rejection. I don't think there's too many people who say that anymore, but back in the day, supposedly some people said that. Yeah, I don't think that's realistic or even good advice, because if you like rejection, it's pretty easy to get. Yeah, if rejection's what you want, you can get it pretty easily. I mean, it would be interesting if you had somebody who did like rejection, but I don't think that's realistic. I think the best you're ever going to get is to have it not bother you. Just like, again, if you were prospecting for gold, like, you don't like when you dig a scoop and there's no gold there, but it doesn't bother you. It's just like, it's just kind of like, okay, we're digging to get to the gold. It doesn't. It's a non-issue. I think that's the best thing. Now, I haven't got there yet. You might never get there. I don't know how you do it, because there is an emotional component. I think when the best way to get over it is probably to have a lot of success. I think the more success you have, the more indifferent you'll become to rejection. That in addition to getting used to it, because no matter how good you are, the overwhelming, I don't care if you're fucking Jordan Belfort, the overwhelming majority of your calls, of the people who you talk to, it's going to be rejection. But you know that if you get to a point where that every no is getting you closer to somebody who is interested, then you can. I mean, you get used to it, and then you have the success that keeps you going. I mean, I can tell you that there are times where, and then for me it's worse, probably because of my depression. But I mean, it takes a toll. It takes a toll. But it's like, you just, I mean, maybe it bothers you for a while, but you come back stronger. You just keep going, and so I mean, it's just part of the game. And if it's something you want to do, don't let rejection scare you out of it, because you'll get used to it and you'll learn how to deal with it, and it's really not a big deal. Now, the second part, though, is more interesting, and that's dealing with angry prospects. And this was my biggest fear when I got into it, was that I was going to have people yelling at me, cursing at me, threatening me, shit like that. Now, okay, the threatening part, that's really rare. I mean, I know it's happened. I'm trying to think, have I ever been directly threatened? No, but I know it has happened to at least one guy. One guy who started with me at my first cold calling job. He but yelling and screaming and the tough guy acts and shit like that, or being like really irritable and rude. Yeah, sure, that's happened. But it's first of all, a couple things need to be established. One, it's not the norm. It's not the norm at all. I would say, I mean, I don't even know how to guess. Out of every rejection, I would say maybe 1 out of 20, maybe every 1 out of 20 rejections. So it's going to happen to you like once or twice a day if you're making a lot of calls, if you're making a lot of outbound calls. Maybe less depending on what you're doing, maybe a little bit more depending on if you're doing some other things that it's more likely to get. But it's relatively rare, and it's just not gonna happen. Second of all, it's actually easier to deal with than the other thing. It's not really that hard to deal with because it kind of like breaks up the routine. Like for me, it's much harder to deal with a hang up, who cares? Those are great, actually. I like the hang ups. For me, it's harder to deal with a not interested, or the one that I really don't like, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, is please take me off your list. I don't know what it is about that one, but I hate it. It drives me nuts. I really hate that one. You get that pretty rarely too. But those to me are way worse than somebody who's angry at you. So they're really not a big deal. However, the one thing that I will say is that sometimes the people who are angry really do get under my skin, and I'm probably not the only one like this. Like they really piss me off, and I've had, I've mentioned on this before. I've had anger issues for pretty much my whole life. I've gotten so much better, but I mean, just to give you an example of like how bad my anger has been in the past. Like when my dad was dying of cancer, I had a fight with him where I told him that I hoped the cancer killed him. I told my sister, in a fight that I had with her before she went to college, that I hoped that she got raped and murdered when she was there. And I once threatened to kill my mom over in a fight we had about like I think it was like about social distancing or something. It was some COVID bullshit. I don't know. Now, in every one of these fights, I was completely in the right. But the thing is, like but I mean, obviously, I went way too far in all of them. None of those things I should ever have done. Okay, the one with my sister, I actually don't feel that bad about. But I feel like I absolutely, like if I would do it, I really wish I could take back, what I said to my dad. I mean, obviously, I apologize. I think he knew that I didn't mean it, but I really, really wish I never said that. And of course, I wish that I hadn't, never threatened my mom. But that was really bad. The but anyway, I think you get the idea, right? Like, when I lose my temper, I tend to go too far. But I've gotten a lot better. Like, I'm like really good with the anger stuff now. And people giving me shit on the phone seems to be the exception. That and people honking at me in traffic. I really hate that. I don't know what that is, but I always try to say like, okay, it's anger. It'll pass. There's nothing you can do. Move on. But on the phone, right? What sometimes you'll have is, and this is a guy I've been thinking about for a while. I'll call him up. I'm like, this is Ballface 8020 from Sleazy Enrico's. I see that you used to be a client with us. And he said, no, I didn't. And I said, you did not used to be a client with Sleazy Enrico's? And he said, no. Like really hostile no. And I was like, because it says here that you used to be insured with us. And then he says, what do you want? And it was like, dude, go fuck yourself, you fucking piece of shit. I was really pissed. So no, I didn't get. I was kind of like, off my off. I was kind of like stunned, like stunned and off my game. So I wasn't really thinking. So I just said, okay, I can't even remember how I felt this, but I was like, so I think I said something like, oh well, I'd like to see if you'd be willing to consider, if I could win you back to Sleazy Enrico's business. Is that a possibility? And then he said, probably not. And I said, okay, probably not. Is that the same as definitely? And then he hung up on me. So anyway, I probably would have forgotten about this guy, except that our date is a fucking mess. And I guess he's married to somebody else who was on the policy, because There was another time I called a woman's number, and a male voice picked up. Now I don't recognize the voices because I talk to so many people every day. And male voice picked up, and I said, "Oh, hello, this is Ballface 8020 from Sleazy Enrico's Discount Home and Auto Insurance. I'm not sure if I have the wrong number. I was looking to speak with Sherry." And then he immediately goes, "What do you want?" And I know, and the once he said that, I remembered him because I remember the "what do you want." So I was just like, so I mean, again, I was kind of stunned, like kind of stunned. So I just kind of laughed because that's like my kind of like, I don't know if you want to call it a nervous response, but it's just, I'm just one of those people who, like, if you say an insult or say something that gets me like off guard, my initial instinct is just going to be like, go like, so that's just how I respond. And so I just went and then hung up. And after I hung up, I was regretting. I was like, oh man, I really should have gotten into it with him. I really should have, given him shit back. And I'm glad that I didn't, because I've talked about this before. Not only is it unprofessional, but it's bad for you to be that, like, to be letting people bother you that much. Now, you can't really control if shit bothers you or not, but what you can do is not feed into the bothering. What you can do is not play into it. You can be like, okay, look, this guy's being a dick, and I can't do anything about that. It's pissed me off. I can't do anything about that. But what I can do is not give in to the pissed off thing and fight with them. And that's the attitude that I take, and I've especially been lately with my cold calls, because you're going to get some people who are irate, and they're going to be like, hey, no, you said you used to, like, I called this guy today, and I was like, this is Ballface 8020 from Sleazy Enrico's, and then I said, do I have Bob? Tough guy, right? And he's like, why would Sleazy Enrico's be calling me about anything? And I was like, well, because, and again, a little surprise, because like I said, this doesn't normally happen. So I was like, well, sir, you're on the list saying that you used to be a client of ours. And then he's like, so what are you calling in reference to now? It's like, I was calling because you were a great client of ours for a long time, and I wanted to see if it would be possible for me to give you a quote so we could try to earn your business back. And then he goes, absolutely not. So he's looking for a fight, right? So all I do then is say, thank you for your time. Click. Didn't even let him respond. Didn't let him respond or get anything like that. And that's really what you got to do. And then I have had a couple times where people just started yelling and cursing, and then I don't even say anything. Just click, on to the next call. And so that's really what you do. You say something like, have a nice day. Thank you for your time. Hang up. That's it. No arguing, no anything. It's an inefficient use of your time, and it's going to stress you out. And there's nothing you can do. Like, what are you going to do? Like, have arrange a meetup for you to fight them? That's not going to happen. There's absolutely nothing that you could gain out of getting into a war of words with them. It's just, thank you for your time. Sorry to bother you. Have a good day. Something like that. Click, before they even have a chance to say anything else. And they hang up before you, so be it. And if they just start yelling and you can't get a word in, click, hang up. And then the feeling is just next, because you've got people to call, right? There's people out there who do want your help, and it's your job to find them. These people, they're not paying you anything. They're these people who are giving you shit on the phone. You don't work for them, so just move on. You don't mean anything to them. They don't mean anything to you. That's life. You go on to the next, and that's that. So anyway, hopefully you guys learned something about cold calling. I hope have that oofy doofy video shortly. That's all for now, and I'll see you in the next.